How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk, guys. Great dialogue coming our way. We're going to be talking about conflicts and disagreements in the workplace. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go along because, as you know, our show is not scripted. I have no idea where Connie's going to go with it. She has no idea where I'm going to go with it. And we'll make the determination once it's done. But I will tell you one thing. Even though we never know where we're going with it, Connie, we seem to always be going in the same direction. That's just this years of this perfect relationship that we have. Before I introduce the lovely Connie, let me get our sponsors out of the way. So I do have three sponsors. One is American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to seek a higher education, get that degree. You know, and trust and believe, guys, we do need more people in this profession to get a degree. Check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, supportive of Tier Talk. So please, guys, you get a chance. It's an online school, and they will work with you. If you ever have any concerns, let me know, and I can connect you with a representative who will help guide you through. They're always there to help. And again, just truly supportive of what we do. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And guys, we also produce correctional content for Guardian RFID on their YouTube channel. Myself, William Young, Russ Hamilton, Piper, Menard. So if you guys get a chance, please check it out. And my most recent sponsor, Tier Talk, is sponsored by Shaya USA. Shaya is the world's leading weapon, cell phone, and contraband detection system manufacturer for corrections. For more information, contact Joe Vasquez at 440-361-7615. He is a subject matter expert. He is passionate about our industry, and he will take good care of you. Guys, on Friday, we're going to have actually Joe on, going to have Russ on, and we're going to talk about working in the lobby, and we're going to give out some information on what metal detectors should be doing to help detect contraband. Having said that, beep, 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 contraband here. Got Connie going off. What's up, Connie? You like that, right? You know what?
I am not contraband.
I know. You know what's funny? I knew I messed that up, but I was already too involved. Like, I knew there's no way that compliments. I knew it, but at that point, I already did the beeping noise. And then when it came out contraband, I was like, ooh, you know, like that's not a way to get a woman. You know what I mean? So, all right there. Oh, you're contraband free.
I'm contraband free.
Sorry about that. Yeah, contraband's that was a very nasty thing I just said. Hey, Connie, hey, what would like an intro? What's your intro, Connie? What do we got here?
Oh gosh, hi everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. And this whole thing about managing conflict and all this crazy in the workplace, we know that sometimes the conflicts are kind of baked into our roles, right? So it'll be an interesting, I think, conversation to kind of just explore a little bit into. So Anthony, here you go. The floor is yours.
Oh, hey. Guys, both books on the market, Connie's and mine. Links are in the description. Speaking of that, I just want to do something. So I'm coming up with this daily reader, working with a lot of people here and trying to come up with topics. I do 365 topics, and it's tough, but I'm getting there. I do one every day. On Sunday, I try to commit to 2 to try to catch up. And the thought came to mind February 24th for the daily reader, and it talks about trust allows for conflict and conflict allows for growth. So I want to read this brief quote, kind of give us an idea of where we're heading. This is the first time Connie's hearing it. And then we'll kind of break down the quote a little bit and then go into our own little segue here. But real quick, again, the title is Trust Allows for Conflict and Conflict Allows for Growth. In corrections, there'll be moments of disagreements and conflict. Usually team leaders tend to avoid or immediately eliminate disagreements and conflicts because it can become uncomfortable. Sad thing is, in the effort to avoid or eliminate conflict, most team leaders, most departments, even the agency itself, may be missing out on a tremendous opportunity for growth and development. If conflicts or disagreements can be done respectfully, we call that respectful conflicts, it will allow for a trustful environment to be created. When trust is built, each team member will be encouraged to speak their mind, which will eliminate groupthink, self-censorship, and allow for diversity in thoughts and opinions. Therefore, the absence of conflicts or disagreements does not symbolize positive teamwork, but rather stagnation. It symbolizes a team that's more concerned about stepping on each other's toes than they are about growth and development. In short, growth and development can be uncomfortable, but that is why it's intentional. As a team leader, they should encourage respectful, task-focused conflicts and disagreements because it enables members of the team to bring their full selves to every discussion. Even disagreements or conflicts amongst staff can come from a place of trust and respect for each other. The last thing any team leader wants to do, or at a greater level, the agency, is to promote an environment that puts a lid on the potential for universal growth and development by avoiding any type of developmental challenges that breaks away from the status quo. And the quote I got after that, so it's my quote, and then underneath I go to a person from the profession. I got this quote from Chris Carlson, correctional officer out of Oregon. This is what he says to complement the context of what I provided. Like Star Trek said, it's easy to be a saint in paradise. For a person or organization to grow, views, perceptions, values, and ethics have to be challenged, defended, upheld, and changed if need be. That is why the devil's advocate role is an important part of any team or group. All right, Connie, so a lot there to discuss, but what did you think of the quote? Did it hit what it kind of hits on the same line of thinking that you have?
Yeah, I mean, all of it is a lot. Are we going to break it down? Like, how do you want us to
Well,
go?
I spoke enough real quick. I got my thought out there. So, so I would like to hear, let's talk about conflicts. I mean, most people, we could break it down. The first thought that comes to my mind with this is, do you think that most people do avoid conflicts and disagreements because they fear that it is uncomfortable to watch or partake in?
So I think the avoiding part is very real. Some people just don't like confrontation. And so they initially or automatically view a conflict as an impending confrontation, which it doesn't have to be, right? Like, and so I guess as I'm thinking about it, if I just don't want to have to deal with it, I can avoid the person, I can avoid the issue, just avoid putting myself in a space where I would have to deal with it, right? But in avoiding it, what the flip side of that is that you also have to live with that decision to avoid the conflict that you know stands there. So it becomes this looming sort of point of stress that you're just not dealing with. And that stress is not going to go away just because you avoid it. On the other end, it could be a blow up, right? But it also is probably something that needed to be addressed to begin with. So avoiding it with thinking, oh, I just don't have to deal with it. But you are dealing with it because internally it's still something that's bothering you, that's stressing you, that's kind of weighing on you. The other side of that is the person may not even know that there is an issue that you're avoiding with them. And so it's something that probably could be resolved if you just said something about it. So I think yes, the avoiding is one thing that people do. I think with managing conflict, people also tend to shy away from the discussion because it may bring up some things that will cause some discomfort. Right? Like, so if it's a matter of holding someone accountable for pulling their own weight, like, I don't want to be the person that tells this person they're a slacker, whichever way it comes out. Not to say it'll come out that way, but, I don't want to be that person. That may need to be what is said in order for us to come to the table to figure out what is it that person needs in order, whether it's lack of motivation, maybe they don't know how to do something, maybe they're avoiding something because they're not sure what's the policy, what's the procedure. They don't feel confident to come forward and ask questions. There's just I think a myriad of things that are kind of living in this space of avoiding the conflict.
Yeah, and guys, obviously in corrections, this is definitely something that plays out. I don't think this is just something strictly for the business world, because I could even see myself in management dreading certain dialogues that we have to have because I know it's going to occur conflict. But one of the things that we mentioned here is respectful conflict, which means that if I know that we can grow from having this dialogue, then I should allow for respectful conflict and even disagreements to come into play to kind of show that, hey, are we really trying every angle? Because I think even as you move up, it's hard to find people that are going to be truthful for you, with you or for you, whatever it is, because the higher the position. But having said that, guys, when you pose an idea and, within the trial era and, you're waiting for responses and it's dead silent, you should ask yourself, because no idea is going to be perfect at first. That's why you're having this discussion, and you're expecting some kickback, but hopefully the kickback is done. I have another thing on this in the book coming out is the kickback is done as a way to help the plan move forward and not to be an obstacle to be resistant to it. So I do believe that when you have people, so here's what I would do. If I had an idea right now as management, let's say I have an idea, we have to propose something. So I do want the front line to get involved. I do know that the idea is not perfect at this point. So I know I'm going to present it. I'm going to have some people that may disagree with it or may have conflict with whatever it is. But mind you guys, the dialogue is going to be an effort to, let's see what we have to do to solve whatever this issue would be. Now, having said that, if you're on the other end receiving the idea from, let's say, me, you have to be careful when you attack the person saying the idea or the idea itself if the person has identified with that idea. So what you want to do is to give respectful questions and then kind of have everybody think. So the challenge in the idea comes from surviving the exhausted questions that are going to come your way that could ultimately make it better, or, wow, we just found out that this is not going to stand. Would you agree with that, Connie, when it comes to if you're going to present a challenge, the challenge should not always directly be an attack on the person or the idea, but rather questions that can show, okay, have we exhausted every effort to show that this idea is where it needs to be? Or, is this just not appropriate at this time?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that one, we can't be so married to an idea, right? Like, because like the whole intention behind us being able to explore ideas is that we are actually open to hearing an idea, and so like even if I present what I think is a solution, right? I should also be open to hearing how other people are going to take that solution and like synthesize it into something that works or doesn't work, right? Like, because everyone has their own perspective. Like, okay, this should work with that, or it wouldn't work because of this thing. And so I think when there is a conflict, the best thing for us to do is to begin to collaborate, right? Because it is in that conversation, in the communications, that we will begin to see how this experience can make, like, as they look at the idea that's been presented, the experience they bring to this idea can either make it much better, or maybe that experience may poke some holes into it and identify places where we might be vulnerable. And I didn't know that vulnerability because that wasn't my experience, right? And so I think on one end, the person presenting the idea should be able to just present the idea forward. But then I think for those who are kind of now sort of consuming that idea and thinking about how this could be implemented in the environment, that person has to just kind of look at the idea in isolation and not look at the idea as, oh, that's Gangi's idea, so we got to go with it, right? Because that is, so when you talked about groupthink in that first statement you made,
Groupthink, I got groupthink and self-censorship.
Right. So the groupthink is really big when people only can identify the idea as Gangi's idea, as opposed to this is an idea that we may be able to implement, but what are all the things we need to take into account? What are things we need to integrate in order to make that idea viable?
Yeah, and usually groupthink obviously occurs when you have no opposing thought that you allow in. So you technically always want to break away from groupthink, because technically groupthink is like a cult. If you think about it, there's no outside influence to challenge it. And to be honest with you, in order for an agency to grow, in order for people to grow, in order for a team to grow, and also to be invested, they have to be allowed to speak their concerns And basically, you should want people to challenge the stuff that you're trying to implement, because, you know, you yourself have to know that everything you're going to put in is not going to be perfect, you know, because there's so many components that are going to be involved. And in corrections, you know, you want to have the people involved at the table and start that discussion as to, okay, this is what we got. How do you want to look at this? Now, mind you, it's never really about finding one solution. It's about finding multiple ways to look at the problem, you know, and then figure out, you know, what really works. And it really is probably going to be multiple solutions from different angles that you have to kind of merge together. The other thing about you touched on a couple of things, Connie, and I want to back it up a little bit too, guys, because there was something you mentioned prior too about, we talked about avoiding conflict, right? And maybe avoiding disagreements. And sometimes this could be a scary thing. Sometimes we assume people know things and they don't. And we wind up, like, if I have an issue with Connie, it's like, well, why do you have an issue with Connie? Well, Connie's my boss, and, you know, I know she knows I'm being overworked and all this other stuff. And, you know, and I know she just doesn't care and all this. Have you ever spoke your mind? No, because I know she knows. And I'm just not, yeah, but maybe you should, because maybe she doesn't know. You know, well, I just don't want to have the conflict. Then don't complain.
Right.
And don't complain, because you can't make the assumption that she knows. But I guarantee you, if you have the dialogue, and let's say, you know, maybe Connie's overwhelmed as well. She doesn't realize that she's just passing off work, you know, because it happens. We get overwhelmed and, you know, let me just get this done. And I know Ganji's the one that's going to be able to do it properly. And then you don't realize that you have a star player that's being overwhelmed. But having said that, that dialogue, that also is a spot for growth and development too, because it could have a potential for a conflict or a disagreement. And now you're being evasive with it, but it has a greater potential for you to state your concern and hopefully it gets fixed. But how many people avoid arguments or conflicts because they assume that the other person may know something that they don't know?
Yeah. And then, like, you give me now the opportunity to fix it, right? Like, because the growth also is there. It's not even so much, you know, this is something that I've overlooked or what have you, because it could have been that, right? Maybe I'm just so busy. Maybe it's whatever, right? But then if that's the case, I'm now faced with, how do I better manage my time? I'm also faced with, how do I come up with the resources to support my employee, right? How do I come up with the, you know, the whatever, right? Like, I mean, it opens the door to finding a solution, right? But when you don't say anything at all, it's almost as like, it's kind of like what you said, right? Then don't complain, right? But if you say something and you're expecting some sort of resolution, then that gives whomever you have in conflict with the opportunity to resolve that conflict.
Right, that's the key. Hold on, I had a grammar error. Russ caught it on one of the polls I did. Yeah, very inappropriate what it turned out to be. It shouldn't have been that. So that had to get removed real quick. Thank God Russ is at work posting shit on YouTube. You know what I mean? I mean, thank God. You know what I mean? His boss allows him to do that, Russ. Nah, he's fine. We're all guilty of it. He saved me right now because spell checks spell checks makes this crazy assumption, you know, and it just goes to the left. Like, God forbid you ever use my Google. Wait till you see what, just type in the letter A and look where we're going. These crazy assumptions. But guys, but going back to, you know, what we're talking about. So, you know, the other thing about this, guys, is that if we're looking to grow, even when you move up, guys, you have to move up and humble. You have to be humble. You have to know, I'm going into this position to grow, not because I know everything. I'm going in to grow. And when you go in to grow, the only way you can grow is by allowing yourself to be challenged, you know, allowing things to come your way that, you know, it's like, okay, hey, Ganji, I don't agree with you. Sure, but what's going on? What it is. And that's how you better yourself. I mean, obviously, if you're looking to grow, you have to allow yourself to be challenged by the people that could be in a better position to tell you what's going to work from their perspective. And the last thing you want as a leader, I mean, we talked about groupthink. We definitely don't want that. But we also don't want self-censorship. You know, we want people to have trust enough to know that they can speak up. And believe it or not, trust comes about through conflict. Because if we're both speaking our mind because we trust each other to know that this isn't personal, we're just trying to figure it out, well, that is where the growth is going to come in. But we have to trust each other first, knowing that, hey, I can tell Ganji this and we're good because, he wants to help. He wants to, and then, or Ganji can say this to me and we're going to be good because I know I'm not perfect. But again,
so I think with that point you make, though, it's really leading to experience being the best teacher, right? So I've learned from experience that when I talk to Ganji, he's receptive to me bringing points forward, right? Whether they're points of conflict or points of agreement, right? And so if we are in an environment where we don't allow or we don't support open conversation about conflict, we don't encourage people to speak up, even if it's against the majority, right? Then we are also perpetuating that environment where conflict will exist.
Yeah. And you know what, too, is if you're so afraid of conflict or disagreement, you may not even say anything, even if there's a chance it could create conflict. Right. So, I mean, the self-censorship is very powerful because at that point here, to be honest with you, you're just going through the motions.
Yep.
Here's another meeting and the sad thing is, I bet you when that happens, let's just say it's the culture at this facility, right? Whatever it is. We avoid conflict. We avoid disagreements, whatever it is. Let's say it's just the culture. But let's say you have a new manager coming in who, presents an idea and wants feedback, right? And then let's just say nobody decides to give it. That's on their end. They don't decide to give it because, maybe the past of the facility, they just don't feel that they're appreciated enough. They don't want the conflict, whatever it is. So they decide not to give it. When everybody leaves and we run with this idea, I'll guarantee you there's still going to be people saying, what I'm getting at, Connie, is like, man, management just doesn't care. They don't want to listen to our thoughts. And, it's like, yeah, but no one's telling me them. I want to,
we can't guess. We can't guess it. No one can guess where the pitfalls are, where the holes are, where we just don't get it, right? Because I think there is a way that management is disconnected from the realities of what the front line deals with. And so there are times where, if we just had their voice at the table, the solution could have been a much better one. But because many times they aren't coming forward, they aren't speaking up, they aren't bringing their thoughts to the table. And sometimes they're not even invited to the table, right? So that's like twofold, right? So if you're invited to the table, you need to get to the table and let your voice be heard. But as managers, we have to be intentional about inviting them to the table so that they can contribute to the conversation. That way, when there is a conflict, we've already set the stage where they know that their thoughts are welcomed, right? Like their opinions are welcomed. And we may not go with what they suggest, but at least it's a part of the consideration. Here are the list of all of the possible options, and your words are there in those possible options, which I think makes a difference.
Yeah, kind of. You're touching on gold here because, to be honest with you, everything we're talking about here really shows you how beneficial conflict and disagreements are. Because again, even just the assumption, what people don't realize is that conflict will actually, it helps break away from these. So you do need someone to speak up and say, hey, what about if we tried it this way? Or as I said, add something, add a question, add something that, kind of challenges the person to see it. Hey, is this the best idea that we have moving forward? But the funny thing is, guys, is we have to, conflict and disagreement really is the bridge for growth and development. There's just no ifs and buts about it. Conflict and disagreement is the way we grow. And the funny thing is, it's not even just about taking the agency forward. I actually think that conflict and disagreement, as long as it's done respectfully, can strengthen the team, the dynamic of the team, the trust that we have for each other. Most people would look at it like, man, they just don't get along. They just don't agree on anything. And we have to do what we can to, bring them together. But be careful with that, though. Be careful with that. I get it if you're having conflicts and agreements that are outside the context of what you're trying to solve, and they're more personal in nature, or I don't like Connie and we're just going back and forth and Connie doesn't like me, and we're really not moving forward. I get it. That's the whole thing that you have to settle. It's more of an attack and a win-loss and all this other stuff. I get it. But then there's also the conflicts that in context are we're having conflict to grow an idea. We're having a disagreement maybe because we want the best for the facility. I don't know if you want to be quick to stop that. So
right.
I think in your
because
mind,
you get to see everybody's perspective, right? Like, I think that's the goodness that comes out of that. It's like, I get to see your perspective. You get to see my perspective. Is there some way in the middle where we can bring those two perspectives together and come up with a solution that we've never tried before?
Yeah. And guys, again, we're talking about respectful conflict, respectful disagreements. I think the way you know it is, this way you can kind of know if the conflict is going in the right direction, again, for ultimate improvement of the team or whatever it is, or if it's going the bad direction, is what is being said or done at the moment. Are we attacking the person? Are we attacking the idea in which the person has identified? Or are we really trying to exhaust all measures to see if this is where we need to be, or where, maybe we have to let this one go? But I actually think it's pretty easy to identify, right? I mean, Connie, do you think it's easy to identify if the conflicts and disagreements are giving us growth, both as a team and as an agency or as a department, whatever it is? Or, hey, we got to stop this now because this is not going where it needs to go?
Yeah, you could tell when it's personal. You could tell when it's not professional. Like, you can tell when there's some hidden agenda in there, as opposed to us trying to come to a resolution that is beneficial to our facility or to our organization. In many instances, it's even more apparent in how the other person presents their perspective. It's very me, very I, very personal, and usually not very inclusive, right? It usually doesn't leave room for someone else to weigh in on it. It's almost very finalized the way they present it.
Yeah, and even at that point, guys, what's the sense of even having the meeting if you're not willing to be challenged on
Right.
whatever it is that you're pushing forward? I mean, especially, like, I know what Connie said too, and I want to revisit something she said. She said that management is removed from the realities of the front line, and 100%.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, but I get it. Sometimes you're right. They could be hands-on, but let's be honest. For the most part, the front line's doing the job every day. And in fairness, you could also say sometimes that front line is removed from the realities of management. It's fair. We'll go both ways with it. But I will tell you this: if we want to bring the worlds together to some extent through understanding, it's going to come through conflicts and disagreements. Because again, we may have an idea of what it is, but they know what it is, and then vice versa. They may have an idea of what it is, but we know what it is. So, I think it's when we come across with an idea. So here it is, Connie. I have an idea of what you go through every day. And then the disagreement or the conflict's going to come in from, well, okay, Gange, but let me tell you what I do every day. Right? Now, the funny thing is, if we weren't looking to grow, I would present the idea, and then you're like, man, he has no idea what we do. And when the dialogue is done, you walk away, and it's like, man, Ganji has no idea. Yeah, but you also haven't given me anything to lean on, because you're so afraid of conflict. Because, well, you know what, he may think that, but God forbid I tell him he's wrong. And yeah, but you're assuming, that he doesn't want to be told. You're assuming that he doesn't want to grow. So having said that, I think that when we have dialogue like that, the idea comes first. Right. So again, I'm talking to you, Connie, right now. Let's say there's a concern and we're trying to implement something for the front line.
But there is healthy caution, right? Like, there is some healthy caution. And I only say that because you do have some managers who do not want to be challenged. You have some people who do not want to be questioned. And so if we keep it in this frontline manager context, there could be that intimidation factor. If I challenge this person or question my manager, is there some sort of negative outcome for me, right? Like, what that could look like I don't know. I think there are very small, they seem to be insignificant things or ways that a manager can make someone's life pretty difficult, right? But where there's a will, there's a way. So I don't want our dialogue to dismiss the fact that there are sometimes,
uniqueness.
yeah, there are some instances where there may be a manager who may be a little threatened by being questioned or being challenged, right? And may not be open to having a conversation where there's some conflict in there and there has to be transparency in that discussion in order to come to a middle ground, right? So
Yeah.
I just don't want the front line to walk away thinking that we think managers are all open. We know that that's not always the case, but in the context of our dialogue, we do want to make sure that you understand, like, we're thinking best case scenario is that this is a manager who wants to move the organization forward,
Right.
wants all of us to kind of grow and develop from these conflicts.
Right. Like, so yeah, let's do this. So obviously on a team, peers, whatever it is, I mean, obviously there's probably a more forgiving environment. It's more inviting to do that. Right. Now, you're right. If you have it would be an insecure leader, I'm assuming at that point, who doesn't allow for the challenges to occur. So here's the thing. So you got a little bit of, it's a good point that you made. So what would I do if that was me? Because we do want to have some resolution, right? So to be honest with you, because remember, we talked about the assumption, and why do I think that person, and I have to say is insecure in their leadership if they're not allowing me to question or challenge. And again, you have to realize something too, is that insecure leadership is also not letting the team grow.
Absolutely.
So the morale is dead regardless. Now, is the morale dead because there's an assumption that the person's insecure because of the past or whatever it is, or do we know for a fact? But either way, I think the advice that I would give, I mean, there's always going to be some inherent risk when you give up your opinion, but I think there's a way you could do it. I mean, even if you think the person's insecure, there's a way that you can ask a question that appreciates where the idea is coming from.
Right.
Even if it's an effort for clarity. And sometimes even through that clarity, if the idea does have a good foundation, but maybe it's not perfect, there's ways in when you seek clarity that can still show some respect to the person who's offering the idea. As long as you guys remember, again, it's respectful conflict or respectful disagreements.
I think that's the key that you just said. Like, the respect aspect is how you address that. Even if you think you're operating from an assumption, like that respect piece that you mentioned is like key.
Yeah, because you know what it is, Connie, you made a very good point. Because the thing is that now if you do have an insecure leader or you think they're insecure, now we go back to the assumption where we don't say anything and the environment dies. So the morale dies. So I still have to say, in order to keep the dialogue going, someone's going to have to be respectful. What was it? You said it. Healthy caution. Kind of but we have to get it said.
Right.
I can't move us backwards. We have to get it said. And to be honest with you, there is still a way that you can approach it. But you know what? For the managers out there, honestly, if you're watching this right now, do you have an environment where people are comfortable? When was the last time any of your ideas was challenged? You know what I mean? When was the last time someone told you, oh, this shit's a bad idea? I mean, I get that all the time. Now, I don't know if that's because people trust me enough. Yeah, Connie knows her. Like, I don't know if that's people trust me enough because they want to speak up, or it's like, yo, this guy's making some bad choices today, But having said that, you know what? Now I'm kind of thinking about it because here I am thinking about like, yo, we could trust Gangi to tell him how bad he's doing, but they trust me a lot. So, because they tell me a lot. So now I'm thinking like, wait a second here, Connie. Now you can look at it. But all jokes aside, obviously it's still, because trust and believe, guys, if you don't build that trust for people to say something, you're going to fail.
Yep.
You're going to 100% fail. So, it's good to have the people that you connect to. It's not about position at this point. We're a team. But with that said, Connie, I just to close off on this thought, I love the healthy caution. And if you do have that insecure leader, I know we're on the same page. You still have to find a way to challenge a perspective that may not be 100%, because if not, we go right back to the assumption, but more importantly, the lid. No one's moving, no one's growing, no one's invested.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, Connie, everything you like to say in closing, because you said 2 yups without a comment. So I want everybody here from the outside watching this. 2 yups without a comment from Connie means we've talked enough. You know, the show's done. I got food being made.
Oh my God.
Am I right? Am I right?
No, I was saying
you're not cooking anything.
No, food. Yeah, food's cooking. It's fine.
Did you eat yet?
No, we haven't had dinner yet.
Oh, so all right. So then we still all right. Then we have about another hour or two.
No,
so
we don't.
Oh no. So, but I was right about the 2 yups.
Well, don't be worried about the yups. The yups are really like I was in full agreement and I didn't have anything else to add. That's all.
And you also lean forward into the dialogue. You see how like we're both leaning forward and we kind of
this is a good one. I mean, just because I think that most people think that the way they manage, the way they lead, like this is the right way, right? Because it's the way they know how to do it, right? And so when someone questions a decision that's made, sometimes it's easier to take it more personal because it's almost like they're questioning me as a leader, and that's not the case. So we talked earlier on in the discussion about personalities and taking things personal and the idea, right? So the idea, you can't own it as your own personal thing, and if someone disagrees, you can't take it personal that there is a disagreement or there is a difference of opinion, right? It is, okay, as a leader, this might be the way I lead. This may be, all of my experiences brought me to this conclusion. Here's something else that I'm going to need to take into account. But that doesn't mean I should shut that door because I don't want to have to deal with someone else's opinion, right? Or someone else's perspective on an idea that may have been brought forward. So as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about, so how do we make sure that, conflict is presented, it's that we're being as objective as we can in the moment to not only show our staff that we can receive the differences of opinion, but also show that we can integrate that into the idea, because we're only going to innovate, right? We're only going to make that idea better, bigger and better. This idea is going to grow, or it's going to get worse, right? At which point you have to use your judgment to see which way it's going. But I think that is where the strength.
You said something. You said that was really good, guys, and I want to explore this just for 1 second. You said about my idea, right? You said like basically, going in, it's my idea. Guys, I think that's the first flaw. It should be going in saying it's our idea. Mm-hmm. So I think this is my baby. This is my baby. You're not going to want anybody to attack your baby. So even a challenge comes off as an attack. So I think the view from management should never be my idea. It should be our idea as it gets developed. Wherever the starting point comes from really doesn't matter. Right. It matters where it ends up. So do you think the perspective should go from my to our?
Absolutely. Because even when it's presented, it could be like, oh, here's an idea. Here's an idea, right? Here's an idea. Not my idea, not your idea. Here's an idea. How do you think we can develop this? Right? Because that then creates a collaborative effort. It invites other people to have a point of view or to be able to contribute to that idea based on the way it was presented to begin with. The moment you walk in, oh, here's my idea. All right, I might not necessarily want to go against Gangi's idea because it's Gangi's. I want to support Gangi's idea, right? Is it a stupid idea? Is it a great idea? Who knows? But just on the strength of the reputation of the person with the idea, there may be people who just won't weigh in, right? So the moment we say, hey, here's an idea, what do you guys think? How can we develop this to be something that we can work with? That's a very different conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's what allows for the healthy dialogue to occur, where now you're going to start to see growth on the other end of the conflict and disagreement, which is the key. And I think that's the main thing. I mean, again, conflicts and disagreements are needed. And I think good people that are leading the team will understand that at the other end of this, there's going to be growth and development. Because again, I think that could be seen through the dialogue elevating. Like, guys, mind you, if the dialogue isn't moving and we're just arguing, but we're not elevating or moving forward, stop it. And now it's a waste of time. Because now it's about a win-loss. We're out of context. We're challenging just because it's coming from Connie, as opposed to maybe Connie does have a good idea. But if you see that I challenge Connie and then she challenges me and then I challenge her and then she challenge, and each dialogue is built on what Connie said. And then we go up a step, like the evolution of a good discussion or a good argument is not one person always going on to that one foundation. It's really, let me challenge what Connie's standing on. Now, Connie challenged what I'm standing on. Now I go ahead and challenge her perspective. And then we just keep it moving forward. Yeah, you got to let that play out. If it makes sense, you got to let it play out. When you stop it is when, okay, I'm going to challenge what Connie's standing on. Connie challenged what I stand on. I listen to what she has to say, but I go back to my original argument. It's done. Because you're not giving any respect for what was just sent your way and then building a dialogue. And most likely the people that kind of always go back to that foundation really haven't developed the idea. Because if they have, then the questions that are asked or they're being challenged, they could exhaust it at all different levels. Hey, I get where you're coming from, but if we do it this way, and well, what about that? Well, I get that too. So now if you do it this way here, that's very moving forward, elevated. But if it's like, hey, Ganji, that won't work because if you do it this way, well, I get that. Well, okay, well, Ganji, what are you going to do? Well, as I told you, the idea is really about this. Yeah, but you haven't told me, gave you a caveat. We haven't adjusted the caveat. Hey, Connie, anything that you would like to say in closing, ma'am?
In closing, I would like to say there is nothing wrong with the status quo, right? When the status quo becomes complacency, that's when it becomes dangerous, right? And so we may not want to address conflict. We may not necessarily want to go through that point of feeling uncomfortable or having certain levels of stress at work. But our reality is that complacency is dangerous for all of us. And so if there is something that should not be being done in the manner that it's being done, because we've always done it that way, you don't want to challenge the majority who has the consensus that this is great for us to do things this way. The reality is that you speaking up could be the difference between us doing something mediocre all the time or us doing something at a level of excellence, right? So I would just want to say there's nothing wrong with that status quo, but when it transitions or transforms into complacency, it's no good for any of us.
Yeah, and Connie, spot on with that, because I think it's actually because of the dangers of our work and what we do or the liability on the other end, it becomes that responsibility to speak up, because we can't use that as an excuse later, and it becomes the responsibility of the manager to shut up. In some cases, if they're leading the dialogue or the person presenting the idea, not to be rude, but again, allowing the two-way dialogue to occur. And then I think also when you go into a meeting like that where an idea is meant to be developed, the positions go out the window.
Yeah.
We're going to have an idea. We're going to develop an idea. There's no positions being played here. Let's just develop the idea and see where it goes. And if you feel as a manager, your idea, because Connie did mention something before too, I don't want to overlook. If you feel that as a manager, your position could intimidate, then how about you step away and let them discuss it and let them bring you something back, and then we can further the dialogue if that's a needed case. I really don't agree with that 100%, because if that's the case, you really need to check yourself and figure out a better approach. But in the meantime, if you need an idea and you feel that's the case, I think it's pretty good if you could just, until I can figure out what the issue here, let me step away for a second and have you guys discuss it. Because again, because as much as we want to sit in a room and say, hey, our positions don't matter, that's something that you have to prove through time that it really doesn't matter. It's not going to happen in your first meeting where it's like, hey guys, I'm your friend, and no, you're still management, you're a position. So through time, you can always earn that as well. That's where the respect comes. But again, it takes time. So you may have to kind of say, you know what, this is my idea, ship it out to the team and have them come back with their concerns. And then eventually when they see that their concerns are being heard, that they're invested, then maybe you can go in and be part of those discussions because you've kind of done what you can to let them know, hey, we are a team on this and the position doesn't matter. So again, if need be. But what a well-rounded dialogue. Guys, don't forget, we have Connie's book on the market, The Cage Was a Cocoon. It's a great book for self-help and development. It's actually a personal story from Connie that she shares with the audience, something that most of us can relate to. And if you guys, again, if you're looking for something for self-development or improvement, this is a great way to start that journey. And just by title alone, The Cage Was a Cocoon. And we never know, right, Connie, if we're even putting ourselves in a cage until you read Connie's book and you realize that there's 4 stages, if I remember.
Yes, there are.
Right. And sometimes you don't realize that you've put yourself in that cage. And guys, inmate manipulation, the code is also available on the market. So again, guys, thank you for listening. If you guys have a chance, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.